we'll make sure folks know they can come back and watch it. Thank you, Tom, for doing that. We have some guests here today, so we're gonna have them start off at the front of the agenda, but just real quick, our plans for today, public comment if we have any. We have Willamette Cultural Resource Associates here to talk really quick about the RLS that they conducted for us. We do have one application that's coming in that we'll talk about briefly. We have a bunch of updates to our work plan and need to look at our budget because that is coming to an end next month. And some updates there, and also some updates on the Jaco House ILS. So there is a lot going on today. It's unfortunate we have a small group, but we'll do the best we can with what we got. And it's nice to have more folks thinking about it than just myself. So thank you all for being here. Let's see, we don't have any draft minutes to approve. Is there any public comment or business from the audience? Tom?
SLS real quick, I doubt it, but let's confirm. I see no business from the audience.
Excellent. So I'm going to hand it over to Adam and Langston for a little bit here to talk about, I don't know if we can keep this pretty informal, but they did, as you all know, they did the RLS update for us for the Washburn Historic District. They worked hard and quickly to get it done for us to try to meet these grant deadlines and are still being really helpful at trying to meet. As of just a few minutes ago, are still emailing, trying to make sure that the state is getting what they need to meet those requirements in a very short timeline. So I appreciate that. Do you guys want to kick it off and give a little background about who you are and what you all do, and we can talk about the project?
Absolutely, happy to do that. Thank you for having us this evening. My name is Adam Alsobrook. I'm a senior architectural historian with Willamette Cultural Resources Associates. I'm actually in the Seattle office, but I have been involved in this project from the beginning when it first came in for scoping, and we worked out the kind of the phased approach to resurveying the Washburn Historic District. So happy to talk about it this evening, and I will let Langston introduce himself.
Sure thing. Hello. Echoing Adam, thank you so much for having us. My name is Langston Emerson Gettinger. I'm a senior architectural historian in the Portland office, but I'm talking to you today from Seattle. And I apologize, I'm going to have to exit early to catch a train back to Oregon around 5:10. So I will duck out at that time. Anyway, I'm basically here to say hello and support Adam, and I will pass it back to him.
All right. Thank you, Langston. Appreciate you jumping on as well. So I didn't have a really like a specific presentation in mind, but Christina had made us aware that there were some concerns on the part of the commissioners on some of the initial findings that we had seen with I believe it was I think it was 5 or 6 resources out of the if I recall correctly, it was 70 resources that we had resurveyed, which is not the entire district. And we had prioritized the resurveying of the primary significant contributing. Did I get the terminology correct? I think I might have gotten the terminology incorrect, but the 1987 National Register nomination used the best way to describe it is kind of like bridge terminology from the old terminology that the National Registry used to what the current terminology is, which is basically a thumbs up or thumbs down. It either contributes, a resource either contributes to the significance of a particular historic district or it does not contribute. or is non-contributing to the significance of the historic district. So, it's a little bit of a different situation to kind of, get our minds around. But there were kind of these, different different terminology used to describe the resources that were considered contributing and non-contributing at the time that the district was listed in the National Register. So I believe that if I recall correctly, the ballpark figure, I forget the total number of resources, but this was just a fraction of the resources. I can actually pull up I can find the exact number. But I think and I actually spoke about this with Jason Allen at the Oregon SHPO just a few moments ago, just, kind of, to kind of get a sense of, where, what should the commission do with this information? And he said that the best thing to do would be to just wait at this point until the entire district is surveyed, to not jump to any, to just, take this as, take this information for its purely informational value at this point, and try not to read too much into it at this point. No, there's no need to take any immediate action. There is no automatic, a trap door opens and things fall off. That is not the case. The district is listed, it will remain listed, and the nomination as it stands, so nothing happens. The best way to describe this is that it was the first step in a multi-phased investigation and update of all of the resources in the Washburn Historic District. And he really urged, that we, because it was only a portion of the district that we surveyed, and I actually found that number. My apologies that I didn't have it right at hand. The primary significant contributing, and so there were approximately 150 resources in the historic district designated as primary significant contributing, which included both main buildings and historic main buildings and historic accessory buildings. And the total, sorry, that was another proposal. In the entire district, there are 335 historic built environment resources, which includes 246 contributing historic built environment resources and 89 non-contributing historic built environment resources. So our survey ended up, there were some accessibility issues on some of them, and so our survey captured 70 historic built environment resources, if I recall correctly. So there's a significant amount left to do in the subsequent resurvey. So that's kind of like a high level, little bit of a snapshot view. Christina, do you have any questions at this moment?
I do. Yeah, I actually have one of the commissioners send in some questions, and
okay,
they're kind of long, and so it might be easier to just read them out loud because it takes me a while to figure out what she's actually asking.
That's fine.
But I was also, before we get there, I'm intrigued by this. Obviously there's five primary significant contributing resources from that small portion that we did that are recommended for no longer contributing due to loss of integrity. So that's 5 out of that's 5 out of 150 so far, right? it sounds like, of our primary contributing resources in the district.
Correct, yeah.
So when we do that second portion, you know, if we were to continue at this rate, we might have like 10, let's pretend we have 10 that are removed or recommended for no longer contributing. What is the, can you explain to us what the next step is? And looks like, I know you said not to worry about like a trap door opening and us losing our status
Right.
as a historic district necessarily, but what does that mean for us? I mean, obviously it changes some of the review process, but.
So the interesting thing is that it actually does not change your review process, because because until it is actually changed, until the actual National Register nomination is amended, everything is the same as it ever was, right?
Okay,
And so if it is a primary significant contributing now, it will be a primary significant contributing until such time as the nomination is revised, and that is quite a process, right? And so you know, we would advise that you not pursue that. Jason Allen at SHPO suggested that it is possible that some of these resources that have been identified as, you know, losing integrity, that, you know, perhaps you know, future cycles of CLG grant funding could be applied toward rehabilitation and restoration projects that might assist with them not losing integrity. You know, he said that is a possibility, right? You know, but the simple answer to the question is that the status does not change unless there's a local, like if you have a local ordinance that's tied to the National Register, you know, that's up to you, right? You know, that's up to the commission. But I would again urge caution, you know, until the entire district has been resurveyed.
right. Okay, and then this has been an ongoing, I know you've said that we won't necessarily lose status, but is there a point at which, yes,
I believe Commissioner
Josephson, sorry,
Josephson, yes, has a question.
yes.
I just wanted to hop in the queue and make sure you saw me. If you have additional questions for those, continue.
I do, but yeah, go ahead. I have also Charlotte's questions as well, so I'm happy to have you jump in. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering, I know obviously it seems like most of the conversation with SHPO was in regards to the National Historic Register. Was there any conversation at all about if this changes any Goal 5 historic resource questions under Oregon land use planning law at all?
The question was whether or not the survey, sorry, you're a little bit hard to hear, but whether or not the survey.
Sorry, I'm calling it on the phone. Yeah, whether or not the survey here impacts, or whether or not if things became non-contributing, if that impacts any like Oregon Goal 5 historic resource questions at all. That might not be a question for you all, and if it's not, please feel free to skip.
I don't know the answer to that question. Is that a technical, I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, statewide planning Goal 5 would really dictate probably the city's oversight and ordinances around historic preservation and planning. But I'm not, it doesn't impact the National Register or documentation of historic resources from what I understand.
And I guess my question was more, if we found that there were a bunch of structures that were not significantly contributing, if that would impact any of the Goal 5 inquiries, not necessarily the National Register inquiries.
I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. Wish I did, but I don't. The I just think that at this time we don't know enough. We really need to see the entire district. You know, it's not yet time to ring the alarm bell.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And then, Elise, that might be something we can talk to Tom and city staff about a little bit more too, following this meeting, if we want to have more conversation about that. All right, so other question I had, I was wondering if there is a point, is there a point where some point the state might say, all right, we are blacklisting you from the National Register. You are no longer invited a part of this club. And I say that jokingly, but there has
Yeah.
been discussion in the past from historic commissioners who are very concerned about doing additional survey work, to be completely transparent, because of a fear of, you know, the compromised integrity of these structures and the fact that we could potentially lose the designation altogether. And I've heard mixed things about how true that is and whether or not that might happen.
I mean, you know, naturally, I don't want to speak for the Oregon State Historic Preservation Office, but in general, they're in the business of doing everything they can to maintain existing designations, right?
Yeah.
And the percentage that the percentage threshold that you would have to cross is 50%, right? Jason Allen told
50% that are not contributing resources within a district. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, if you, for whatever reason, I mean, if you had a natural disaster or something of that nature, and you
Yeah.
lost, in this case, if you lost 80 of your primary significant contributing resources, then I think that, you know, that would be concerning, right? And, you know, there'd be a case to be made for delisting the district potentially.
Or redrawing the boundary.
Or that is exactly correct. That was my next
Yeah.
point, is that Jason also said that, you know, it's like they would be more likely to redraw the boundary to get the correct ratio.
I got it. Okay.
Yeah, so that you know, you could really focus on what was remaining.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing too that I would like to, you know, just kind of remind everyone is that the SHPO could completely disagree with us, by the way.
Okay.
So, you know, these were just our findings and our recommendations, but the SHPO could come back and say, you know, no, we don't agree. You know, so we are kind of in this kind of a little bit of a preliminary limbo right now, because the SHPO is still reviewing, you know, they're still reviewing the report. We've got to do some data entry to get stuff into the Oregon Historic Sites database, which, you know, but I think just at this time, I think that the percentage is so low as to not really cause alarm. And I think the other thing too is that this was just I think like the northern third of the district, like the most northern third of the district, and there's actually a greater concentration of resources in the southern 2/3. And so it's a little bit, you know, I say this cautiously, but I think that it might be a little bit of a skewed sample.
Okay.
You know, so.
All right. I'm going to jump in here, so hopefully Charlotte can listen in on this and hear some responses to her questions. But just three. Her first one is just kind of a curiosity for the commission, really, I think, and also whether or not it's possible, but to include a introductory paragraph to the work that was done at the beginning of the report for folks who are not practitioners. So That could define phrases like primary significant, contributing, irretrievably lost integrity, and things like that. So folks, especially those folks from within the district that might be reviewing it, would understand what these changes might be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could probably take that straight from our proposal.
Oh, right.
You know, because typically in our proposals, we write to you, the client, and say, this is our understanding of the project. And so, these were terms that we are not familiar with because we don't use them on a daily basis, because they are these antiquated terms, but it's very easy to add an introductory paragraph and kind of a glossary.
Awesome. That would be excellent. Okay, so I'm going to read this next one. I haven't gotten through the whole thing yet. So she's asking in the commission, would you be interested in having a discussion about the 5 properties that WCRM recommended as non-eligible? It would be an opportunity for us to retrace our steps and learn about how these properties lost character defining features over time. Perhaps Tom could check the city records for these properties. Commissioners could also use street views images to figure out why changes occurred. Maybe we can learn from these and apply what we learned to future decisions, such as design review. And so she lists the 5 properties that lost integrity. If folks are interested in such a review, I'll volunteer to do some research. So that's not really a question for you. But I guess along those lines, if we were to do something like that as a commission, as an exercise, a learning exercise, I would be interested in hearing from you what the typical changes or improvements are that would influence a building in losing its integrity. I think we probably know the answer to it, but I'm just going to ask you.
Well,
see what your thoughts are.
I mean, and this is okay. So this is really, really, really tough. And partly because some of these resources had a low degree of integrity to begin with, or I should say lower degree of integrity, because it's a district. It was a district nomination. It wasn't individual, so they were evaluated collectively as a grouping of historic resources. And so generally the changes that we saw, even in the case of a resource that had, for instance, in 1987, if it already had replacement windows, if those windows were replaced again, that is that gets into the tipping point territory, right? And particularly like if they're replaced, if it was a compatible replacement, like with a wood window, maybe like a clad window that approximates the appearance of wood, and I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff, like not knowing exactly what your district guidelines are, so certainly like a window replacement, like with like a white off the shelf vinyl window, could be one. Siding is a biggie. Like if you take all your wood siding off and you put up hardy, I would say that definitely tips it into losing integrity. Those are some big ones. Doors to a certain extent. The other thing too is that there were some cases where there were some porch infills, and I think that is also one that, like, I understand it, right? And porch infills happened historically, but just comparing what we saw in the field with what was in the nomination, I think those are kind of some of the biggies, right? To use it in the most technical terms, it's the removal of character defining features, because it's the character defining features of the individual resource that help it convey its historic significance. And so I think that would be kind of like my kind of leading bullet point list on, changes that would, potentially kick it into non-contributing.
That's great. Thanks, Langston.
Thank you,
Thank you
Langston.
all.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
So, and then just as a step, another layer to that, it also matters whether or not it's like a street facade versus a rear facing portion of the building, correct? Because you can't necessarily assess the rear sides of the building.
That is correct. Generally the front and the two sides are the ones that are going to be considered here. We did not consider any rear facade in this, right?
Yeah.
Excuse me, elevation. We've been corrected. It's not facade, it's an elevation. So anyway, so the primary and the two secondary, so the two side elevations would certainly, come into play here. That's generally why the Secretary of the Interior's standards for the treatment of historic properties, say, if you're going to add on to a historic resource, it's like we strongly, recommend per the Secretary of the Interior standards that you put it on the rear, or that the addition is subservient, to the primary and secondary elevations. And I just remembered another alteration. Adding additional fenestration. So adding additional window openings and changing the historic window pattern and configuration on each of the elevations. That's a big one too. That's a big change to the character defining features, because each of the eras of resource, like the styles, like they have a particular window pattern that's usually associated with that. So sorry, multi-part answer, because I just remembered that other one.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, I have one more, and then we'll see if anybody else has another one to chime in. Charlotte was wondering about mapping and whether or not there'll be a map associated with the project showing, like as part of the report, houses that were looked at, which I guess, I don't know what else there. She was referencing some SHPO guidelines, maybe for surveys and relating to mapping.
We'll need to talk about that, because we did not budget for a map.
Okay.
But we can indicate the ones that we surveyed.
Yeah. I mean, there was a map included in the proposal, I think, that just showed what was surveyed.
Correct.
As a baseline.
The additional back-end work that we have to do for the Oregon Historic Sites database, it's like that will, that's for the widgets in the Oregon Historic Sites database that, that will pop up for the district.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And that sounds like something too, maybe if we do want a map, then we would just need to budget for that for our next grant cycle potentially.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Any other questions for Adam from Tom or anybody else? No. Thank you for spending the time to be here. It's nice to hear it like somewhat explained, I think, and yeah, understand a little bit more the significance. It's daunting, I think, to see that recommend no longer contributing in the report, but it's nice to hear that's not as concerning as maybe it was initially, at least.
Yeah.
So.
I would just say this is informational.
Mm-hmm.
It has not yet become regulatory. You know,
Great.
so it should be hopefully used in the spirit of, you know, like you talked about, you know, maybe identifying some of the areas, you know, that the program could potentially improve on, you know, oversight and regulating, you know, these things. So, yeah, there's no need for immediate action. You know, nobody's gonna start taking stuff away. Like, you know, it's purely informational at this point.
From your perspective for our phase 2, do you think it would be worthwhile to go to a new section and take that same approach of primary contributing resources, or would you recommend surveying all of the resources in the same region? Do you have a suggestion for us?
My suggestion would be to do everything that you can to complete the entire resurvey within the next 3 to 4 years. And to just go ahead and survey everything that was not surveyed as part of this.
Okay,
And it's a, you know, it's a big undertaking, but it's and it's certainly something that, you know, the city might decide that they would like to use volunteers. You know, we can talk about strategizing, you know, that, but it's that would be just kind of a possibility, you know. But my recommendation would be, it's harder to do it in more than 2 phases, because I think that the information that you want you'll only be able to get by completing the resurvey.
okay, great. Well, we will be in touch. Phase 2. So thank you again for all your hard work on this and the helping with the tight timelines and everything else. We very much appreciate it.
Absolutely. And sorry that I've got to leave early. I've got to go to another historic
Oh, really?
commission.
Lucky you.
But yeah, please, you know, if anybody has any additional follow-up questions, you know, Christina, just, you know, reach out to me and we'll do our best. And then in the meantime, we'll continue working on buttoning up all the remainder of the work.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you. I'm logging off now. Take care now.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.
Awesome. All right, so next item on the agenda, moving forward, we have the historic land use application at 922 B Street. Tom, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll share my screen. All right, so we received an application finally for a window replacement. This is 922 B Street. This is the rear facing facade, which after hearing Adam's comments makes me feel better about this. So the owners of this property have, from what it sounds, done a number of applications on this house. They are familiar with the historic processes. Seems like they're taking really wonderful care of the place. So I think it is a greatly contributing primary resource that we have here. But anyways, the application, this rear window right here, is leading to a shower stall. So the applicants and owners are wanting to, I think, repair this bathroom. In their narrative, they detailed a cracked shower pan and just overall space of a bathroom that needed to be rehabbed. They pointed out that because this window is in a shower stall, it's a high moisture, high humidity environment. And because it is double hung, it has been affected over time from that humidity and moisture. So what they have proposed is a single pane that cannot be opened to that shower stall itself. And of course, covering it with the trim as you see it now. The only difference that we would see is instead of it being double hung and seeing the bridge between the mill, it would just be a single pane of glass there that they would be replacing that with. I believe they detailed it as a paintable fiberglass, which I think would only be seen from the inside because of the trim that would remain on the outside. And they were going that route because it is that high moisture, high humidity environment. So they don't want the wood to rot out again and have to replace it again. This was triaged. I took in the application as a type 1 because it was minor alterations to the structure itself is how I pictured it. There was a report I was able to pull that Drew had done for a porch at this location as well. And that had come in as a type 1 as well. So I figured this was less invasive than that. So it would remain a type 1 application. I have since written that application or written that report, and of the findings that are to be made, you know, it talks about will the alteration affect the historical character, you know, this and that. It kind of asks it in different ways throughout those findings. And no, it hasn't. So I'm done with that report. If y'all would like to see it, I can send it directly to you. But that's basically the gist of this application for 922 B Street.
All right. So Tom, are you looking for any suggestions or recommendations at this point? Or you're saying that window has closed, so to speak?
I mean, I'd be happy to take any comments, if there's a way that we can, you know, condition something that makes it even more historically accurate. If we want them to save the trim perhaps and reuse that specifically, if that's possible. And also the dimensions are the same. I forgot to mention that. They are not changing the fenestration or opening, just replacing the window.
Yeah. Great. I can't see anybody now, but does anybody have any comment? Elise or Celine?
For me,
Yeah, I don't know that I have any comments. I think it makes sense to me.
Okay. Great. Elise?
not for me.
Okay, great. I think you said that and I missed it. Awesome. Well, I have a feeling Jenna might have some good perspective on this, and she's been a part of a lot of window discussions in the past and knows a lot more about details and whatnot. So she's always a good person to check in on when we're thinking about details and whatnot. I guess my only thought, but it doesn't come with a huge amount of backing to it at this point. I have to dig a little bit. The double hung kind of look, the absence of that definitely will be visually apparent, and that to me is probably the biggest change. I think the change of material in this application and location is probably not the worst thing. They're compromising the integrity too much, but I don't know if there is an option for kind of mimicking the double hung appearance, at least to carry that forward. That would be one consideration, but I also like your suggestion of maybe reuse of existing materials to every extent possible. I think is a good one too.
Yeah, I can add that in there as a, I don't know so much as a condition, because it's to the extent possible, but certainly a recommendation for sure.
Thank you for bringing this to us.
Absolutely.
If you ever too, like if you ever have questions about material stuff, it might, I don't know if I'm volunteering Jenna a little bit, but she has a wealth of knowledge on some of that, or she might know somebody to get in touch
Absolutely.
with. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so let's jump into a work plan. We have about 30 minutes, actually 35 minutes we can use for this. I have an update from Jenna. So the first thing on the awards, let's see. Pull up her message here. She said the new posts, oh nope, that's postcards. Awards, so the award period has finalized. The jury submitted their recommendations to the mayor. The mayor was supposedly making final selections last week, and we haven't heard anything yet. So we're at this standing point of waiting for an announcement from the mayor's office on that. So no big updates there. Postcard wise, Jenna said the new postcards arrived, and that she already sent the receipt and she just received a check from the city. So that portion of our work is complete. So along those lines, I'm just checking our budget here. Elise, thank you for making all those notes in the budget from last time. I see an item in here for $16.59 for postcards, and so that is a very precise number. I'm assuming that is the number that Jenna got reimbursed, and that item is final. Does that sound right? We don't have any other lingering costs that anybody's over.
I believe that was correct. Yeah.
Okay. Separate my screens here a little. Walking tour guide. Celine, I think we added this on because we knew that was something that you were going to start working on at some point. That doesn't mean that we have an expectation anything has been done, but we thought it might be good to have that on there for future reference. I don't know if you have any updates or want to just table that for our next meeting. That's fine too.
Yeah, I have nothing to report, but hopefully my life is calming down a little bit and we'll be able to devote some time to this soon.
Okay, awesome. Educational opportunities. So the big update on this one is that we have made some progress with Dr. Lewis. So the commission approved, sorry, my screen is too small here. Okay, so we had $1,500 designated for education. We have $855 for Dr. Lewis's presentation. That includes $600 for Dr. Lewis and $255 for the Wildish. We've confirmed with Dr. Lewis that we are going to try to hold that event on August 31st. Hopefully that works for most people, but we needed to make a decision quickly because there's a number of things that are trying to align relating to this. It's a Thursday evening. So I was curious what the Commissioner Swenson Harris and Commissioner Josephson, if you all have any preference on timing. I think we were talking about an evening presentation and he said that he would be available in the evening to do that. So right now I have the Wildish tentatively scheduled from 5 to 8 because we have a 3-hour window when you reserve it. What do you guys think is an appropriate time to start a conversation where we'll get the maximum amount of public attendance?
I think we might look at 5:30 or 6, you know, after most people are out of work and give them a little bit of drive time.
That's kind of what I was thinking too.
I agree. I was going to say 6, 5:30 works too. Dr. Lewis wants to talk to us that long. I'm sure he has lots of very interesting things that I personally would love to hear. So 5:30, if he thinks he can fill that much time, 6 if not.
Yeah, I think he's planning on a 1-hour presentation. So we could potentially, I've been talking to the City of Springfield Museum and Library Community Engagement Specialist, Mindy Linder, I think is the name. And she is very excited about working with us on this too and helping promote the event at the library and the museum and being involved. So I might, once we get this timeline finalized, I'll talk to her more, but there might be an opportunity to have like some drinks ahead of time or, you know, some tabling or something else happening out front. As she's gearing up to do a bunch of work with the American Indian and Alaska Native community and drawing some attention to that over the next year with some of her programming. So she's very excited that we're doing this and wanting to support us in any way possible. So I know that our grant can't cover drinks and food, but I was going to reach out and see if there was any funding available on their end to just, you know, put some drinks out as an incentive for folks to attend. And so if we did something like that, we could say 5 o'clock, you know, come after work and hang out for half an hour, and we can be setting up, and then maybe we can gather people at 5:30. The other part of this that I would like feedback on to see if there's any concerns from commissioners is the city and Willamette partnered on a dialogue, a community engagement event that focused on American Indian Alaska Native community. And it was like basically a listening session. And we had different attendees present and we took notes and we have a whole report that came out of it. Recently that effort was awarded the Achievement and Community Engagement Award from the state of Oregon. And so they're looking for a chance to do kind of a presentation of the award. And I thought, well, you know, maybe these two efforts can align because the state, you know, can come down and present an award. Dr. Lewis was a part of that effort. So I would talk to him to make sure that he's aware of what's going to be involved in all of that, because I don't even know yet. I'm still learning about it. But as long as Dr. Lewis is comfortable with it, I was thinking that those two events might be able to partner up, and then we might get some attendance from folks who are interested in being there, you know, like leadership and management potentially at the city level and Willamette level also attending the presentation because of that. It's just another draw in for that and a celebration of, you know, good work being done in our community as a way to welcome people to this conversation and welcome Dr. Lewis. And so I thought it worked nicely. And I understand that we also want to be very cautious and sensitive to Dr. Lewis's involvement and the focus of his new book too. So I thought I'd throw that out there and see if there was any concerns on anybody's end about that being incorporated in it.
I think as long as everyone, both the partners involved in the listening session, whoever's going to be receiving that, we're comfortable. I don't want to, you know, because the Historic Commission was not really seemingly for it all. I guess that involved. I just don't want to steal their thunder, I guess.
Of the award.
Yeah.
I think.
But I personally am okay with it if everybody else is.
Okay. Yeah, I think they're still looking into making sure that everybody else is okay with it too. So, but I wanted to make sure I checked in with folks on the commission since we're funding it. I mean, we are technically representatives of the city and the city was involved in this award, even though we ourselves were not necessarily. Or I wasn't wearing this hat. I was wearing a different hat. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. If there's no objections, I'll just keep moving forward with those conversations and seeing if we can pair it. My plan is to make sure city and Willamette feel okay about that, and then have a discussion about what that award part looks like. I'm hoping it will be kind of short and sweet. And then sit down with Dr. Lewis before the presentation and make sure he's aware what's going to happen. And then hopefully it will all go smoothly from there. But we have a little time to figure that out. It's about a month out. So on those lines, and we have those funds. Tom, you and I are going to have to work real closely in the next month because I know we're reaching deadlines for submitting things, but I asked for Dr. Lewis to submit us the invoice you probably saw in advance, and the Wildish is already working on that as well. they're gonna send us a proposal, and I gave him your contact info to
Okay.
include on that. Since I think they would just invoice the city makes the most sense for that.
Just, yeah, come directly to us for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my plan there. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
What do you think?
So we still have remaining $645 in our training and education budget. Is there any other proposals or requests for those funds at this time?
Not that I'm aware of. I know last meeting we had spoken about rolling it into a final trough of funds for this Atlas project that Jenna brought up. So if anything were left over, that could possibly go towards funding that, as it is related to the historic nature of the city, I believe.
Yeah, I did have a question about that. So my recollection of what we previously approved was a city, so William came and asked for additional funds. And then we denied them, and then we said, but if we have additional funds, we'll provide additional funds if there are any available at the end of the project. So that's what they've been told so far, and that's why we haven't been invoiced from William, because they're waiting for, what they should invoice, kind of. And they have checked in with me, but I'm like, I'm like, why don't you guys just wait, because we don't know where we're at until the end anyways, and it won't matter. We can just process that invoice. But then I saw at the last meeting, we also approved use of additional funds for the Atlas project, which I think is probably a great cause. I don't know. My question on that was, I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that project myself. I think Jenna may have spoken a little bit about it at a previous meeting. I'm just not recalling. And I want to make sure that that is an eligible project for the grant, that we don't get ourselves in a weird situation there, because all of our current projects are approved, at least for now. And so, like, what kind of reporting or whatever else amendments might need to happen as part of that, because that wasn't included in our original grant.
Right. Yeah, that's one thing we would need to confirm to divert it that way. We do have Elise and Celine have their hands up, so maybe they have something to add.
Yeah, my recollection of our conversation at the last meeting was that we had said, and William Lane, if you want more, come back and ask us for more. And that, because I was actually fairly concerned about that. And I think we decided that the time for them asking had come and gone without them asking for any additional funds.
Yeah, that was a comment that was made at the last meeting, right? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah.
And so we operated on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe we crafted a motion
Yes,
that referenced that, but I'd have to actually go back and look at the motion.
you did. Yeah,
Language.
That's correct. I listened to that meeting since I wasn't there, and that's exactly what happened. And what I'm referencing is what actually was William Lane was told. The conflicting part of it is that William Lane came back and asked for more funds from us, and we denied them, but said we will approve additional funds if there are funds available. And we all voted. We drafted a motion for that and approved that as our original standing motion for additional funds. And now with the second motion, we have modified, I guess, that approach. So I see Celine has your hand. You might have some more insight too, but that's my recollection of how now we have two different motions that say different things, and I'm not sure how to resolve that. I just want to make sure we are cognizant of it, and we don't have quorum tonight anyway, so we can't modify that. I don't know what the right way to resolve those motions are. Celine?
Yeah, so my intent when I crafted the motion at the previous meeting was for that to be covering any funds left over at the end. My belief was including if William Lane were to come back and ask us for funds. I believe we'd had a bit of a discussion in that meeting of the fact that there may still be a request from Willamette Lane and that we didn't want to commit a dollar amount because there could potentially still be that request. So I'm not sure, I don't recall what the initial motion regarding funding towards the Willamette Lane project looked like, if it also just said anything left over at the end of our cycle. I guess we might want to look at the specific wording of that, because I wonder if this creates sort of a two-tier anything remaining at the end of the cycle. First, we look at the Willamette Lane request, and then we look at the Atlas project. And I'm just not sure what the wording was, so I don't know if that's an approach that might make sense for us to consider.
Right. Yeah, we'd have to go back and I guess watch the recording when Willamette Lane came back and made that request for additional funds. And then I think we voted that same night on what our approach is going to be. So we could go back and look at it. The other approach would be to just kind of call it we are down to the last wire here. I don't know if we want to call it a void that we either going with the Atlas at this point is going to require us to connect with SHPO, make sure that our report is updated, get whatever documentation they need about the Atlas project to get an invoice for that, and then to get reimbursed, which we have exactly a month to do all that. So if that's possible to do, we can do that. And then for Willamette Lane, at this point, we could also just say, you know, we're reimbursing you the original 1,000 that you requested. And that's what it is right now. I think that's fine too. At least Commissioner Josephson.
Yeah, my preference would be to give Willamette Lane money, honestly. And so I guess we could either sit here and we can pull up the motions and we can decide if one motion necessarily conflicts with the other, in which case they'd probably override each other, or if they could be read together, in which case Willamette Lane could apply for additional funds. Or if they do override each other, I think my preference would honestly be to just call another meeting for the only purpose of considering, just a short one, but for the purpose of considering how to resolve these two.
That's an interesting thought, because we don't have quorum tonight anyways, so we're not going to be able to ultimately make any decisions or changes tonight to our budget. And by the time we meet next time, we're just a couple days before the end of our award. So a quick, specific, targeted meeting to just, here are options A, B, C, let's vote, be done. Just to resolve. I don't know if legally, like any motion, what needs to be done to resolve conflicting motions, if that would do it. I don't know if anyone's gonna.
So just to really quickly talk about that. My interpretation would be this is a Robert's Rules of Order question. And so I'd have to crack open my Robert's Rules, but my vague recollection is that if you could read the two motions together, one would be amending the other. If they are necessarily entirely conflicting, then one would be basically overriding the other. That's not the Robert's Rules of Order term, but that the most recent one would take precedence because it was most recent. So the Atlas would win if they're entirely conflicting. But if you could read them together, so like if our Willamette Lane one said Willamette Lane can apply for additional funds before the end of this cycle, however it was worded. And then this one, the Atlas one, said whatever is left over will go to the Atlas. Then to me, I wouldn't read those as totally conflicting, because Willamette Lane could come in, apply for the rest, be granted that, and then there would be none left over.
Okay.
But I'd have to actually take a look at the motions. To know that that was the case. And, you know, I don't know if you know, I think it might be easier to just, the hard part is that we don't have quorum. So we can't, because if we had quorum, this is really easy. One of us just makes a motion and it overrides the previous motion.
Well, could
Because
we do
don't
that?
have,
Can we
Yeah,
have a
we just have to
special
meet
meeting where
again.
we have a new motion? Like, here are 3 motions we are considering, and does somebody want to make a movement and vote on a preferred motion?
we, as far as I know, you can call meetings at any time. So as
Okay.
long as they're properly noticed. So that would honestly be my recommendation.
Okay, that's great. I feel uncomfortable because of my involvement with Willamette, and I would rather be in a situation where I can like remove myself from that conversation and let you all just decide, because it doesn't.
I'm happy to chair that too.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
If you want to. Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Swainson Harris.
Yeah, I agree with Elise. I also am not currently looking at a copy of Robert's Rules, but I think her interpretation appears to be correct. I would also be in favor of a additional meeting, provided that that is workable for our staff person. But I think that might be the easiest way to get this figured out.
Okay, excellent. Tom, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a problem. I can get it noticed whenever. That's what we've been doing for the awards, little subcommittee meetings that we've been doing in the run up to the awards. So just let me know when we need to meet, and I'll get the notice taken care of through Sarah and get the meeting scheduled.
Okay. Well, given that, Tom, I think I heard in the last meeting that invoices needed to be submitted to the city for processing at least 2 weeks prior to our deadline or reporting, or what's the timeline on your end to make sure that invoices, I guess, can get processed for the grant? I'm not sure what's happening on that end of it. I want to make sure we get all this done in time.
Yeah, that sounds right. I would need to check with Sarah on that. She's been a really good point person that like handles the invoices. When y'all send me the invoice, I send them to her and she gets in contact with finance with the string of, you know, whatever we charge it to. So yeah, I can follow up with her and see what would need to be done.
Okay, I think confirming that as long as we get it to our 2 weeks prior to the end of the month. I don't know, yeah, that the grant can be still used for reimbursement would be good, and we can just make that assumption for now and operate around that, and you'll let us know if it needs to change. Commissioner Josephson.
Yeah, one other question that I had was how long does Willamette need to actually make that request? I'm just thinking, because I think the public, obviously staff or council would know better, but I think the public notice required is only 24 hours. And so
I think that's right.
recall it being rather short.
Yeah.
And so if it's not tomorrow, probably not tomorrow, but like a week from today, that way Willamette has time to put something together, and then the city has time to actually pay it out in time for SHPO's reporting deadline.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, from my internal knowledge of Willamette, they could probably submit an invoice within a few days. But you did mention applying, and that was one thing, like for this project that got really tricky was we don't have an official application or process that was defined. I mean, I think they submitted an email with a description of the project. They attended a meeting, made a request, and then they attended a second meeting, making a follow-up request for additional funds. And then there was the question of other projects, and we didn't have anybody else that followed up on those projects from what I recall, at least, and requested funds. And so I think because it was the ILS, the way it got written into the grant is, the state just said, you know, it's an ILS project and we will fund that as an ILS project, and we're not necessarily acting as a pass-through. This is an actually targeted, like, approved project that SHPO is willing to incorporate as part of the grant. But we are passing on those monies, so it made sense for William Lane to come and present and try to get us to all, you know, vote as that is something we want to incorporate in our work plan. So I guess it's up to us then, and that's my question to both of you as well. Like, what would you like to see from William Lane as a follow-up if we did move forward? Because that will impact timeline on when we need to meet, get approval, get a response out, get funds back, and all that stuff. Commissioner Josephson.
So this is hard because we can't change anything tonight. And so technically it depends on whatever the commission feels whenever we meet should be an application. My recommendation at this point would be to craft a motion that requires the minimum requirements necessary to comply with all applicable law and regulation.
Okay.
So whatever is required of the state or through city code should be included, and otherwise it shouldn't.
So how does that apply to the grant? I guess I'm trying to get my brain there. So if we're crafting a motion that says,
I mean, I would just, if I were crafting a motion, I would probably craft a motion with whatever the remaining, like, we'd get a remaining funds number ideally, and then craft a motion that says William Lane may apply for up to whatever that number is via email to Tom, if Tom's okay with it, in a manner that meets all applicable law and regulation for the grant.
okay, that makes sense. This whole crafting
So
motion things.
not being too prescriptive, because we can't fix it. That's the problem,
Yeah.
right? And so,
Right.
like, after this meeting, that's whatever that motion ends up being, that's it. And so
Yes,
that would be how I would craft that motion.
great. Excellent, thank you.
Of course.
Law school is paying off. Thank you, Commissioner Josephson. All right, so let's, it seems like to me a follow-up meeting needs to happen within the next week, because that provides us essentially one additional week to resolve whatever is decided at that meeting, which seems feasible. So I'm going to propose we would meet at the same time 1 week from today, since that is kind of our standing meeting time, instead of trying to do a big all outreach, but we'll see what our response rate is. Would that work for those of you on the call today?
It would work for me, but I have a standing 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock on the first Tuesday of the month, so it would need to be quick.
Okay. That would be a lovely goal to achieve anyway, so.
It would work for me.
It would also work for me.
Okay, let's propose that, and send out an invite to the group and let them know that we need to meet as a group to have quorum and make final voting. And Commissioner Josephson, I will count on you to help facilitate that conversation.
I'll do that.
Thank you. And I'll be present, but I probably won't vote.
Okay.
We want to shoot for 4:30 again.
Yep.
Okay.
And also maybe when we're sending that invite out, like, please RSVP so we know that we have quorum. I'd hate for people to try to attend and then find out we still don't have a quorum and we've wasted a week. If we need to reschedule it at a different time when everyone is available, we can try to accommodate that.
Good.
All right, so as part of that, I will have a finalized budget. I mean, I think what we have here, it looks like we're working with $649 remaining from the grant. And so that's basically what we're figuring out where it goes to.
Out of curiosity, when's the last time we've spent all of our grant funds from SHPO?
Never since I've been there. I don't think so. I'm so excited.
Woo! We did it. Or we're going to do it. We're gonna do it.
Yes. I mean, I think from everything I've heard, SHPO is just tickled and thrilled with us because we completed an RLS, which has been on our grant multiple times and we've never actually done it. We completed an ILS on top of it, which they're also thrilled about because we are potentially going to be adding a local historic resource to the National Register as a result of that. And we're doing these like great presentation. Our award program is going. I mean, they think we're great and thrilled. And so I don't anticipate any problem getting funding next time. Not that we ever have issues, but I mean, if I imagine getting funded to the maximum amount, I would hope based on all the great work people are doing. So, all right. Let me look real quick. I know we're getting down on time. Moving along on our agenda handbook, and I think we decided we have a note on our agenda to table the conversation about handbook and commissioner guidelines until the fall. Is that okay with you, Commissioner Josephson?
Totally okay with me.
Okay, important stuff, but right now we're focusing on the deadline. Update on the budget. We just kind of went through those last items, and so we'll schedule that follow-up meeting. The Jaquah House ILS got submitted to SHPO. They provided some great guidance. It seems like they don't have any issues with the report that they got. There was a lot of recommendations, and so those have been passed on to the consultant, and we shouldn't have any problem getting that project completed on time. Any updates on the OAPA historic walking tour?
So I checked with Drew and there was no proposal submitted. So there will be no historic walking tour.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll bring that back sometime. Another way. And then there's a commissioner update section where there's a note about sidewalks, which I think was something Charlotte had brought up, correct?
Right. Yeah, I believe they're doing updates of sidewalks throughout the city, and the Washburn is one of those areas. So I think she had some concerns whether or not that would impact any historic resources and or possibly trees. So without her here, I don't know any specifics that she was concerned about, but perhaps we can talk about that next time as well.
Yeah, we'll keep that on there. Any other commissioner updates?
I'm not a commissioner unless anybody else online has one, but I did receive a letter I wanted to try to speak to if we had time.
Yeah, please.
So the mayor actually received this, and Christina, this is one I had sent you probably a few months ago. At this point, it was a mailed letter that I received for the Springfield High School being nominated into the National Registry. I don't know who nominated, perhaps it was Jenna. But now the mayor has received a letter, and basically the letter states that there are required revisions to the nomination, and I haven't received anything yet. It doesn't say what those revisions are. So I was just wondering maybe if something had been sent to you. If not, I mean, I didn't know Jenna wouldn't be here, or perhaps I forgot, but maybe she knows more about it. But I just wanted to put that on your radar, that the Springfield High School has been nominated for the National Registry.
It's so interesting that got nominated, and like the Bratton House isn't.
Right.
Maybe somebody has tried that in the past and I'm just not aware, but, or yeah. the Bratton School Building, I guess. Cool. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I know anybody can nominate, right? So,
Yeah, it could have been anyone. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Well, we can keep that on the agenda and see if next time we meet, if anybody has any insights on that, but I'm not aware of anything.
Okay.
Commissioner Josephson?
Sorry, I was having a problem unmuting. So like Springfield High School is what we're talking about, correct? Just to,
Excellent.
there's not like some other, we were talking about home of the Springfield High Millers, Springfield High.
525 Mill Street, if that is Springfield, the Springfield High School.
Oh,
I don't
no,
think
that's
so.
the historic
7.
Springfield High School. So we're talking about,
I
yeah, that makes more sense.
Okay.
I was like, I don't know that Springfield High is old enough to be even nominated.
bet it
Okay,
is.
well, I guess it's probably pretty close. But anyway, I guess whoever owns that building, I guess I would want to see if they know anything about it being
Yeah.
nominated.
So I bet
But maybe
Jenna,
there's who owns that building.
it's a private developer now.
Okay, so I thought.
So yeah, they
Okay,
are trying to
anyway.
get it registered so they can become eligible for funds to help with some of the renovations. I don't know if anybody saw, the trees fell down, the historic trees out front.
Oh, no.
Oh no.
Yeah, and Jenna had, like, we had talked about those previously at a meeting and how cool they are and how we want to try to save those at some point when we were trying to save the building, and that was forever ago. And then when Jenna got involved, she said that she actually saved some of the samaras from the tree and they were putting them in the fridge and they were going to do something with them because they had a tree assessment done and found out that they were rotten. And then I drove by the other day and the trees had totally just collapsed and they're hollow on the inside essentially, and they failed. So it's pretty dramatic. I think they've cleaned it up probably by now, but it was really interesting to see. So no more historic trees there. It's sad, but at least we have the samaras and Jenna's fridge to document. Maybe grow a new one from.
That'd be
So,
awesome. That'd be
yeah,
Yeah.
it would be cool. All right. On that note, I think we have covered everything on the agenda. Is there any other last comments or thoughts? I'm seeing none. We will adjourn the meeting 3 minutes early. Have an excellent week. We will see you next week, same time, same place. Online.
Bye
Yeah.
everyone. Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be good.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for being here.
Of course.